talk to us about what Klobuchar and Grassley have proposed and the status of it at this moment.
Yeah, so there was a wide array of tech-related antitrust bills that passed the House Judiciary Committee last year. Since then, the conversation has coalesced around this legislation you're talking about, the American Innovation and Choice Online Act. It would prevent the companies from giving preference to their own products. So, for instance, on Amazon's e-commerce platform, it couldn't privilege its own private label products over products from small businesses that rely on its platform. Right now, there was a huge amount of momentum behind this legislation. There was serious talk that this legislation was going to get a vote this summer, and Chuck Schumer himself had pledged to put it on the floor in the early summer. It didn't happen. Now we have a week till August recess. It's not going to be happening this week. His office has confirmed, and we reported recently that he told a group of donors that it wasn't going to happen. But now people are looking to the fall, potentially in September. This legislation might come to a vote. But that's a very unusual time for bills to be considered ahead of midterm. So it's all up in the air right now.
Interesting indeed, David, that big tech stance on big tech could become, a real issue for voters in the November midterms after so many years of figuring out how to regulate them. What do you make of this particular bill and how it could impact these companies?
First of all, I loved your montage at the beginning of this segment. It was quite amusing. To be honest, I don't think, even though surveys show that most consumers/voters do feel that tech companies are too powerful, I don't think this kind of issue is anywhere near the top of the agenda for voters in general. So I think legislators do have to be careful as they're taking actions that might seem, based on hearings they've had, et cetera, to be rational ones, that they don't annoy the voters that put them in office. Because the problem with regulating Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, et cetera, is these services are essentially as present in people's lives as government itself. So you don't want to mess with them lightly. Now, I do think many of the things that were demonstrated in, especially the House hearings, were egregious. The quote from Bezos, just based on reporting that we've seen elsewhere and some of the evidence at the hearing, is flat wrong. They do preference their own products at Amazon. So some things need to be fixed. But I just worry that we have a sledgehammer here, and maybe we need like a very fine-toothed nail, fine nail and a very little hammer.
Emily, what do you make of that? And talk to us about how sentiment towards big tech has changed since 2020. I mean, we're two long years now away from that. A lot has changed, and it doesn't look good for tech.
Yeah, sentiment soured on the big tech companies. It started souring in 2016, mostly related to concerns around then Facebook, now Meta. And it's only continued to become more and more politically potent to, put yourself in opposition to the major tech companies, as part of a broader sort of anti-corporate push during the Biden administration and during the Biden presidency. At this point, the major message that's being pushed by the tech companies is this is not what your voters care about. They are running tens of millions of dollars worth of ads. We did a count this week. They've spent $120 million on advertising, essentially trying to convince voters, Congress is trying to meddle in your phone, while so many other more important things are going on, inflation and gas prices that affect you. Why are they looking at this? And so it's yet to be seen if that's a winning argument, but it definitely was potent enough that Schumer didn't put the bills up for a vote.
Now, David, I want to get your thoughts on this latest action from the FTC suing Meta over its attempt to buy this fairly small VR company within Unlimited. The FTC is now challenging this, and we've learned that the FTC filed this lawsuit because Lina Khan wanted to do it, even though her staff disagreed. What do you make of this, that it seems the FTC, or at least Lina Khan, is determined not to let Meta grow by acquisition like it did with Instagram and WhatsApp?
Really good question. But before I answer, I just want to make it clear. I don't intend to echo industry talking points about this big bill. I do think the industry has made enormous errors. And there's huge resentment against big tech, big corporate generally, as the other Emily said. But I just think it's very risky to just go after these companies wholesale the way they're doing it. But back to Meta and within. At the moment, I think that Meta has made so many mistakes and gotten so many people angry that there is going to be support for almost any pushback against that particular company. And to some extent, I think even on the other bill, one of the reasons so many legislators are so willing to go after the entire group of companies is because Meta/Facebook's crimes are really so vividly obvious that it seems justified to go after quote unquote big tech. But I think it's going to be very hard for Zuckerberg to get any kind of significant acquisition through with Lina Khan in there. And certainly, maybe he'll even succeed in ultimately achieving this acquisition, but everything is going to encounter pushback. And one other point I just want to make, let's not forget what's happening in Europe with the Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act, which is very parallel to some of the efforts being made in the US and which is further along legislatively.
Absolutely. Europe is a whole nother hour-long show in itself. Emily, I got to ask you, what are the chances the FTC can stop this latest Meta deal, even though it is smaller scale?
Yeah, I think a lot of experts looking at this particular lawsuit by the FTC are saying this is a very novel theory because essentially they're not challenging, they're not saying Meta is currently monopoly in the virtual reality space. It's saying that this acquisition could set the stage for them monopolizing yet another market. This is sort of untested and new way of approaching acquisitions. So there's a lot there's a lot of people who are skeptical about how winning this argument could be under current antitrust laws, but it's not even about blocking this particular acquisition. It's more a show of force by Lina Khan's FTC. She said you have to bring cases even if you're not going to win them because that's how you change practices within particular industries, and that's how you kind of put fear in companies as they make these kinds of acquisitions.